This week at the fastest street circuit of the season, drivers embarked on a racing adventure you won't believe. They circumvented drone missile strikes, and I'm not even joking. Teams turned on themselves. They uncovered a sweet little secret about DRS zones, and they navigated the loss of 5 drivers who did not finish. No one died or anything. There were just 3 drivers who did not finish and 2 drivers who did not even start the race. This is the Made in America F1 Racing Podcast.
Welcome to the F1 Racing Podcast, the only podcast that has the guts to give it to you straight. So grab a clean pair of racing panties, because this American-made podcast will surely make you shit yourself. Here's your host, Billy Simpson.
Welcome back to the F1 Racing Podcast, an American-made podcast with the guts to give it to you straight. I'm your host, Billy Simpson, and I'm excited to tell you about a normal, not weird at all, Grand Prix weekend in Saudi Arabia, where Hamilton didn't make it out of Q1, Schumacher demolished his ride in Q2, and after practice 1, there was, what do you call it? That's right, a drone missile strike. Are you fucking kidding me? A drone missile strike? But everyone agreed to race, so NBD. Totally normal. Let's just race. I guess. Also, we'll look at the intense fucking battle between the Alpine drivers and what may be seen as the beginning of a Red Bull win streak in a brand new segment entitled The Fully Involved Grand Prix Review. And Sally, our AI F1 fembot, debuts a whole new segment named Ask Sally, our AI F1 fembot. But before we jump into the Formula One STC Saudi Arabian Grand Prix of 2022, let's take a quick break for our sponsors.
Well, Billy, we still don't have any sponsors. So get off your lazy ass and get some sponsors.
Okay. Thanks for that dose of reality, Sally. Look, I'm not perfect, so before we open up the show today, I'd like to make a public apology. Last week, I misspoke by saying Team Red Bull was using Honda engines, and that is not correct. To make it right, here are the engines which each team are utilizing. Mercedes is supplying themselves, McLaren, Aston Martin, and Williams. Red Bull supplying themselves and their sister team, AlphaTauri. Ferrari is supplying themselves, Alfa Romeo and Haas. And Renault is Alpine, so they're supplying themselves. So that clears it up. I apologize. I made a horrible joke about my lawnmower catching fire because it has a Honda engine, and Honda is not supplying any engines, just some consultants to Red Bull. But I do have a quick question now that you know who is actually customers of Mercedes. Have you ever seen a team switch engine suppliers during a season? You can respond on social media at F1 Racing Podcast if you have the courage. Okay, now with all that out of the way, let's jump right in. This weekend was the Formula One STC Saudi Arabian Grand Prix of 2022 at the Jeddah Corniche Circuit. This is the fastest street circuit of the season. It has 3 DRS zones with a top speed of 209 miles per hour. It's also the second longest circuit of the season. It's 3.836 miles per lap. This is a night race, and they actually have 600 lights around the track to make sure it's illuminated for when they're racing. It's 50 laps. There's 27 turns in the circuit. The lap record was actually set by Hamilton with a 1.27.511 lap time. The tire compounds used during this Saudi Arabian Grand Prix were the C4, C3, and C2, where the C4 is the softest tire and C2 are the hardest tire compounds. There was an interview with Mario Isola of Pirelli, and he predicted it would be a 1 to 2 stop race using hard and medium tires. He said that the track has long, quick corners that put energy into the tires. He also iterated that most teams decided to keep 2 sets of medium tires. That was actually directly before the race, but I'm going to backtrack a little bit, okay? I'm going to go back to practice 1. And I usually don't talk about practice, but today we're talking about practice, man. There was a lot of talk in practice about the porpoising and the bouncing effects until the conversation began to shift and focus on the drone missile strike that had just occurred on an Aramco oil refinery just 7 miles away. So to that point, this is where we'll debut our brand new segment here on the F1 Racing Podcast entitled Ask Sally, our AI F1 Fembot. Hello, Sally. I was watching practice and there was a drone missile strike, so I decided to do a little bit more research because it was very secretive what had actually happened because I wasn't able to watch practice 1. And when I got home, I started to watch practice 2, and there was all this talk about what had happened in practice 1. And not a lot of people were talking about exactly what happened, so I had to do some digging. And I did find an article from Matt Morledge from Sky Sports in Jeddah regarding the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. And the title of the article was Saudi Arabian GP, F1 drivers back event to continue despite concerns after attack at Jeddah Oil Depot. The Grand Prix Drivers Association, or GDPA, which all drivers are a member of, agreed to carry on with the race after the Formula One and FIA presidents insisted that the Saudi Arabian GP was safe. They spoke with Saudi Arabian officials and had this quote: "The Saudi Arabian government authorities and security agencies gave full and detailed assurances that the event is secure. It seems Yemen's Houthi rebel group took responsibility for the drone missile attack on Aramco's oil depot just 7 miles from the track. Sounds very safe, but let's see if anyone else can calm the anxiety I'm feeling about proceeding with the race." In the same article down below was an analysis by Sky Sports News, Craig Slater. And he says in a quote, "There has been an ongoing conflict in Yemen. Government forces aided by Saudi-led coalition have effectively been in a civil war with rebels for the past 7 years. And these rocket attacks have been a fairly regular yet infrequent occurrence, and Jeddah has been targeted before." Okay, did he just say rocket and not missile? And also what I'm really picking up on is the phrase regular yet infrequent. So, Sally, could you please tell us the definitions for regular and also the definitions for infrequent?
Webster's dictionary defines regular as the following: recurring, attending, or functioning at fixed, uniform, or normal intervals.
Okay, and now infrequent.
Yes, Billy, I heard you the first time. If you'd give me 1 fucking second, I might get a word in edgewise. Webster's dictionary defines infrequent as the following: placed or occurring at wide intervals in space or time.
Oh, okay. That completely clears it up. So it sounds like it happens on a regular basis, but just with more time in between drone missile attacks. What do you think, Sally?
Well, Billy, it sounds like an oxymoron, or a combination of contradictory or incongruous words. But from a strict definition standpoint, there's nothing to worry about, they shouldn't expect another rocket attack for a minute. Anywho, enough about rocket attacks, let's just take a 15-minute break and get back to practice 2, please.
And that's just what they did. Thank you, Sally.
You have been listening to my all-new segment, Ask Sally the AI, F1, Fimbot, where you can ask me any question on our Twitter or Facebook page at F1 Racing Podcast. And I might answer some of your questions during the next podcast. See you next Thursday, bitches.
This is where we'll debut our brand new segment here on the F1 Racing Podcast entitled The Fully Involved Grand Prix Review. Okay, and now back to racing. We'll talk about qualifying 1 because Hamilton didn't even make it out of Q1 and ended up starting in P15. Mercedes is really struggling this year. With exception to Russell, who also, again, made it into the top 6, so he's doing just fine. Next, we had qualifying 2, where both McLarens were out. Norris ended up starting P11, and Ricciardo started P14. Also in Q2, Schumacher destroyed his car, hitting the wall at 33 Gs at 170 miles per hour. Needless to say, he sat out for this weekend. In Q3, only one driver with a Mercedes engine made it to Q3. That driver was George Russell, who started P6. So as Q3 ended, here is your starting grid for the race. P1, Perez, look at that shocker. P2, Leclerc. P3, Sainz. P4, Verstappen. P5, Ocon. P6, Russell. P7, Alonso. P8, Bottas. P9, Gasly. And P10, Magnussen in the Haas. So as the race began on Sunday, the drivers will take a recon lap or a reconnaissance lap, which happens just before the formation lap. Now during the recon lap, Tsunoda actually runs into some drivetrain issues and has to retire before the formation lap. So Schumacher with Team Haas and Tsunoda with AlphaTauri are out of the race. We only have a grid of 18 starting drivers. The tire strategy ended up only being a one-stop race where most teams started on the medium tires and only 3 drivers started on hard tires, which were Magnussen with Haas, Hamilton with Mercedes, and Hülkenberg with Aston Martin. They really wanted to start on the hard tires so that they could go long and then end on the medium tires because they're faster, but that didn't work out. It seems everyone else's ability to start on the medium fared well for them. Let's talk about the grid after lap 2. As we know, turn 1 is always the beast where everybody's trying to gun for a great position on the track. Perez kept his P1, Leclerc kept P2, but Verstappen overtook Sainz, so he moved up 1. Ocon stayed the same, Russell stayed the same at P6, Alonso stayed the same at P7, Bottas stayed the same at P8, but Magnussen moved up to P9, overtaking Gasly, who fell 1 spot. Let's talk about the biggest winners in the second lap. Verstappen gained a spot, went from P4 to P3, and Magnussen gained a spot, went from P10 to P9. Those are really the only biggest winners. Everyone else really only jumped about 1 spot or so, and I say these 2 are the biggest winners in Verstappen and Magnussen because they're higher up on the grid, so it's a lot more valuable. The biggest losers, however, was Zhou Guanyu, who dropped 6 spots. He had the same engine problems last week, and it went into anti-stalls. Another biggest loser, I'm going to say Sainz, because he lost a spot going from P3 to P4, and Gasly lost a spot going from P9 to P10. At lap 5, it really started to heat up because Alpine started to fight each other. And Alonso believes, as he's driving, that he has more speed than his teammate Ocon. And as Alonso attempts to pass, Ocon cuts off Alonso and almost wrecks him on the main straight. On lap 7, the Alpine fight continues. Alonso passes on the long straight. On lap 8, Ocon passes Alonso on the straight. Then he runs off track Also on lap 8, Verstappen says Leclerc's back lights are not working. And remember, those lights are not brake lights. It just shows when a driver is harvesting energy, which tells the driver behind that they're not going to have as much power. And Verstappen obviously wants to know that, so he says that over the radio. On lap 9, the Alpine fight continues. Ocon gives the spot back because he ran off track to regain the lead. And at this point, Bottas and Magnussen decide to join the party, and they are both within DRS range of both of the Alpines. And remember, the stewards will not tell you when to give a spot back this year. It's up to the teams to decide. And I think what I'm finding is whenever the stewards make a note of an incident, they're giving the team time to go ahead and fix the situation, right? If that team does not fix the situation, then the stewards will actually hand out a penalty, and we're going to see that in just a moment. Okay, so on lap 10, Ricciardo is the first to pit. He puts on the hard tires. And about this time, the announcers decide to call into the Alpine team principal, and he states that we're going to go ahead and just let them race. I just don't know if this is a good tactic, because letting them race hard is not a good long-term strategy for the tires, the engines, overheating, all of the above. And at this point, they're also letting Bottas and Magnussen back in the race. The team principal comes back on and he says, well, they're going to race in the beginning, and then they're going to go ahead and settle in, and you'll see. It's a great tactic is basically what he's saying. Also, lap 10, there's an incident on turn 1 where Alonso and Ocon, the stewards had noted that. Ocon gave the position back so he wouldn't be penalized, and he was not. They chimed back in, the stewards did, and said no further investigation because Ocon reprimanded himself and gave the spot back. On lap 11, at turn 4, there was an incident that the stewards made a note of, but made no further investigation against Norris and Magnussen. On lap 12, turn 2, Zhou Guanyu and Albon are under investigation. At this point, the biggest gainers are Hamilton, who's moved up 3 spots, Hülkenberg, who's moved up 2 spots, and Verstappen, I'm still going to call him out because he's still in 3rd place, moved up from 4th place. The big losers here are Ricciardo, who lost 4 spots, and I've got to think it's because he pitted early to put the hard tires on. Ocon has lost 2 spots at this point, and Sainz lost the 1 spot to Verstappen. So he's still in the biggest losers on my list there. On lap 12, Ocon tries passing Alonso again and runs off the track. Okay, moving on. Lap 13, there was an incident where Zhou did not fix the situation, and he receives a 5-second penalty for leaving the track and gaining an advantage. Lap 14, radio call comes into Ocon, hey, hold your positions, and right about that time, Bottas proceeds with passing Ocon. Lap 15, the incident with Alonso and Ocon is said to be no further investigation. Also on this lap, Leclerc comes on the radio saying he wants to box to overtake, and it looks like Ferrari's going to attempt the undercut. At this point, they are behind Checo, Sergio Perez, by 2.2 seconds, so they come on the radio and they're going to box, right? Within that same lap, Ferrari's team principal, or the communicator who talks to Leclerc, comes on the radio and he says, yes, box, box. Well, since these radios are heard by all teams, Red Bull decides to go ahead and pit Perez. Leclerc's directly behind Perez, and instead of boxing, he continues straight. At that point, when Perez comes back out of the pits, he falls back behind Russell. So the question is did Ferrari bluff their box, or did they see Perez going in and decide to stay out? So it's kind of an interesting thing to debate there, which ended up working out very well for them because 1 lap later, lap 16, the double yellow flags begin to wave because Latifi in the Williams car wrecks, and he does not finish the race. Since there's a double yellow flag, Latifi's wrecked. The virtual safety car comes out. Verstappen and Leclerc pit. Perez gets fucked. Had he just waited 1 more lap and let Leclerc pit, if that's what actually Ferrari was going to do, he would have been in 1st place still. But that's the way it came out. As Sainz was pitting on the virtual safety car. He comes out of the pit and Perez forces him off the track. That incident is noted by the steward. So they're still under a safety car now, and you're not allowed to pass during a safety car unless you're instructed to unlap yourselves. So Perez never lets Sainz back through. What I find also interesting during the safety car is that Magnussen, Hamilton, and Hülkenberg, none of them choose to pit. And in doing this, they gain track position. Magnussen moves up to P6, Hamilton moves up to P7, and Hülkenberg moves up to P9. And remember, none of the three of these drivers started on the medium tires like the rest of the field. They're still on hard tires, and it seems like they're still going strong on the hards. A quick note here, I'm noticing that Hamilton was having some pretty hard times on those hard tires, but it doesn't look like any of the other teams are having any problems with the hard tires. So don't know if it's just the car, what's going on, but no one else is really complaining about the hard tires except for Hamilton. On lap 20, the safety car ends. Lap 21, Leclerc sticks his arm out of the car and waves at Verstappen. Now, I didn't actually see this, but the announcer had mentioned that Leclerc stuck his arm out and was waving, and Verstappen was the only one close enough. So we have to suspect he was kind of taunting Verstappen. And as in typical Max Verstappen style, as the safety car had ended and the lap is about to start again, the race is about to start again, he's just all up on Leclerc's ass, trying to make him start before he wants to start. And again, Leclerc is just kind of watching, and he ends up getting another good start and pulling out ahead of Verstappen. So Max is kind of pushing us. It didn't work again this time. On the restart, Russell passes Magnussen, moves into 5th place. Perez lets Sainz back through, so Sainz is back into 3rd, so that the stewards will not penalize him. And it looks like they had penalized Zhou Guanyu with 5-second penalty, and that is definitely something that Sainz doesn't want to take on as a 5-second penalty, so he went ahead and gave the spot back to Carlos Sainz there. On lap 24, we start to learn the newer strategy that I was picking up on with the DRS zones, where Magnussen has the lead on Hamilton going into the final DRS. Magnussen lets Hamilton pass in that final DRS zone so that he can have the DRS down the main straight and take back the lead immediately. On lap 25, now that Magnussen has the lead again, Hamilton decides not to pass Magnussen in the final DRS zone and instead decides to keep the DRS down the main straight and ends up overtaking him with his DRS. So a little bit more strategy there where Hamilton learned. And you got to think it has something to do with these cars too, of being able to follow more closely. And in seeing this, is this a peak of things to come from other drivers and how they should be utilizing their DRS zone strategies? We'll soon find out. On lap 26, Verstappen complains on his radio that Leclerc is crossing the white line at the pit entrance, which is not allowed. And Max's team principal comes on there and says, okay, great, just you focus on the race. We'll take a look at all this, right? So I had mentioned earlier that Zhou Guanyu had the 5-second penalty because of the incident that he had earlier in the race. Well, during that safety car, when he pitted, he was supposed to take the 5-second penalty then, but he didn't serve the penalty for long enough. So the stewards maintain a new penalty for Guanyu where he has to drive through the pit lane. And since the speed is greatly reduced in the pit lane, this is a significant penalty for Zhou Guanyu at this point. Lap 30, we'll see that after these 30 laps have gone by, Hamilton reports on the radio that his hard tires are okay. So we're over halfway through the race. His hard tires are still good, but he does have to pit one time per the regulations. You have to race on 2 separate tires, cannot be the same type of tires. So he's kind of in a little conundrum there. Right about this time, since Perez had given Sainz the spot back for running him off track outside of the pit lane, the stewards go ahead and rule that no further investigation is warranted. So he got out of that penalty. Around lap 35, with 15 laps to go, Hamilton, Magnussen, and Hülkenberg still have not pitted in the entire race. And they looked fine on the hard tires, but you do have to change. On lap 36, Alonso can't get out of fourth gear. And we see an alarm on his steering wheel that says, cool the car. So Alonso did not finish the race. And you got to think, I wonder if this was because the team was letting Alonso and Ocon battle it out within their own Alpine team. Did the car overheat? What had happened during that turn of events? But was Alonso being harder on his car? On lap 37, just after Alonso is put out of the race, Ricciardo starts experiencing mechanical issues and he cannot finish the race. About the same time, we see Bottas driving into the pit and he retires his car. So he did not finish. So we've got 5 drivers that did not finish this race. Well, 2 that did not start and 3 that did not finish the race. Ricciardo and the McLaren with mechanical issues. And I'll go ahead and say that they're using the Mercedes engine. Alonso and the Alpine, so that's a Renault engine. And Bottas is in the Alfa Romeo and they're using Ferrari engines. Also, on lap 37, there's an incident and the yellow flags come out. There's a virtual safety car. So part of Ricciardo's car going down, he decides he's just going to pull in to basically block the pit lane so no one can come in and pit. Now, before he does that, Hülkenberg and Magnussen both are able to get into the pits. Around that time, Hamilton was driving by the pits. Again, he still hasn't pitted, so he needs to change tires, and he didn't know if the pit lane was open or not, so he bypasses it. But had he actually gone in and pitted, he would have been able to keep his tires and keep his position on the track. But as soon as he was driving by the pit lane entrance, that's when the team principals came on the call and said, yes, box, Hamilton. And he was like, well, shit, I'm already past here now. I can't do it. And so it's starting to get exciting. You know, we're lap 37. As the virtual safety car begins to end, you got to believe Verstappen's going to make a move on Leclerc. Because on lap 41, Verstappen has the fastest lap. And when this virtual safety car ends, he's now behind Leclerc by a half of a second. On lap 42, in the final DRS zone, so here's that foreshadowing that was happening earlier about strategy. Lap 42, Verstappen passes Leclerc in that final DRS zone. Leclerc takes back the position on the straightaway, much like that lesson Hamilton had learned against Magnussen on lap 25. On lap 43, after we just saw the strategy that Verstappen had taken by overpassing on the final DRS, and then Leclerc taking the lead back down the main straight, what's going to happen here? Well, as they get to the final DRS, Verstappen and Leclerc both lock up as they try to let each other pass. And maybe we're seeing some flat spots on the tires, but Leclerc ends up keeping the lead through that main straight. Lap 44, Verstappen reports again to the radio that Leclerc is crossing the white line again to enter the pit. At this point, Perez takes the fastest lap of the race. Lap 46, Max gets close enough to Leclerc again. He stays off those instincts to let Leclerc keep the lead in the final DRS zone. And then he takes the lead down the main straight with DRS at the beginning of lap 47. At this point, lap 47, Verstappen takes the fastest lap. Lap 48, little more drama. Double yellow flag. Stroll and Albon collide. Is this going to be the point where Leclerc gets to catch back up with Verstappen and possibly take the lead? Let's see. Here's what happens. As he's about to pass Verstappen on that long straight, that double yellow is only in accordance with sector 1, so Leclerc has to slow down and not overtake Verstappen. And at that point, Leclerc never could catch back up. The final grid ended up P1, Verstappen, P2, Leclerc, P3, Sainz, P4, Perez, P5 is George Russell, P6 is Ocon, P7 is Norris, and Ocon passed Norris at the beginning of the 50th lap, but at the end of the 50th lap, Norris almost passes Ocon on the last straight. It came down to the wire. What a great finish by those two drivers. On to P8, we have Pierre Gasly. P9, Magnussen. P10, Hamilton finished in the points again. And he got lucky for not even making it out of Q1. The teams without points this week were Aston Martin and Williams. both Mercedes engines. Key takeaways: it was a one-stop strategy race. Most of the drivers started on the medium tires and ended on the hard tire. The three drivers, Magnussen, Hamilton, and Hülkenberg, started on the hard tire and ended on the medium tire. And you got to think, again, they wanted to be on the faster tire to end the race so that they ended the race stronger. And I'll reiterate, had Hamilton pitted along with Magnussen and Hülkenberg during the virtual safety car, he may have finished P6 right behind his teammate, George Russell, but instead finished P10. Another interesting note, Zhou Guanyu, who had problems with his clutch on the start, falls all the way back from 12 to 18, and now he's essentially in last place because Tsunoda and Schumacher were out of the race. He comes all the way back and finishes P11, one place out of the points in his second career race. He did finish P10 last week in the points in his debut race. Keep your eyes on Zhou Guanyu. He is something else, and he's only 22, so he's a youngster. Another key point, patience is a virtue when it comes to DRS strategy. The DRS strategy was crucial in the last DRS zones and in the main straight DRS zones. And it makes you wonder, what would have happened in Bahrain if Verstappen would have waited to overtake Leclerc in the second DRS zone last week? So I think we're going to see a lot more DRS zone strategies from here on out and be able to make that part of the race. Because before, I do believe that the cars weren't set up for that with all of the dirty air and turbulent air that would come off the back. They couldn't follow as close. They couldn't make these lap after lap moves on each other. It's going to be some great racing this year. Another great note, Haas with Magnussen finishes in the points again at P9, and they are using the Ferrari engines and they are paying off. So great decision by Haas this year. And I'll just say it again, the teams without points were Aston Martin and Williams, and they are using the Mercedes engines. So that's pretty bad for Mercedes. Not sure if they're going to have many customers next year. In conclusion, the drivers survived a drone rocket attack just 7 miles away. Everyone with a Mercedes engine are struggling right now, except for Russell. Verstappen is a fucking beast. Guanyu is one driver to watch throughout the season. Finally, patience and strategy was a virtue that served Verstappen well in the last and first DRS zones of this circuit. And that about does it for today's F1 Racing Podcast. I'd like to thank you, my listeners, and my sponsors. Or should I say, beg anyone with the courage to sponsor this amazing podcast in the future. And to everyone listening to this, yes, that means you, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, share it with all your friends and enemies, follow me on Facebook and Twitter at F1 Racing Podcast, and give me a shining review on iTunes.
You've been listening to the F1 Racing Podcast. Tune in next time to see what Billy will say next.